Somebody told me they gained 15 in quarantine, and I was like, yo, it ain't been going that long.
They cannot blame that on quarantine.
What?
15 quarantine.
That's
Debbie
crazy.
is not
that quarantine 15, bro.
That's wild.
Usually take 9 months. We're talking 3 weeks.
That's wild. All right. Well, we do these awkward beginnings. That's our MO.
Are we live?
We are definitely live.
We're live.
We were just gonna wait for you to figure, to notice. It's all good. No big deal. No big deal. We out here. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Glad you're with us. This is episode 4, I believe, and you probably noticed that we have a somewhat of a name for the podcast now, Affirmative InterAction. We were throwing a couple of different things around. I don't know that all of them would be cleared for live publication.
I could list some of my.
I guess if you want to do that, on your own time, that's fine.
Save it for the end.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Affirmative InterAction. We felt like it was catchy. I don't have like a whole spiel or a Malcolm Gladwell intro onto why we did that. Low key, it kind of felt like it's just kind of the reverse affirmative action. We all black except for Logan, so there's a little spin on that. No, I'm just playing, but
I am not black.
Yeah, we know. So yeah, but we thought it was catchy, and so we hope y'all like it. Maybe drop some comments on that and let us know how it's doing. But before we jump into the first topic, we just do kind of the general. How y'all doing, man? How y'all feeling? It doesn't have to be COVID specific. I know we've kind of, done that all different angles, but how y'all doing?
Good.
Good, man. I cut my hair actually last week. I cut my own joint, so I'm feeling good right now. I'm feeling like a human being.
True. It looked bad before. I was not ready for how bad that looked, but it looks great.
Shout out to Kev the barber, though. The barber stayed there for walking me through.
4 hours.
This dude was on. Yeah, exactly. This dude was on Instagram Live with me for 4 hours, walking me through how to cut my hair, and it was time well spent, in my opinion.
Man,
that's
I got to give a plug to Kevin, man. He came in as a freshman, and literally within like a year and a half, he had to have had like hundreds of cuts every week, bro.
I'm screaming.
Bro, he trusts himself.
Oh, man. One of my favorites. Just look at the intensity, bro.
Yo, your boy was mid haircut and he was drawing on some paper like, dog, what? That's what you want me to follow?
I was so nervous, bro. I was so nervous. When my man was drawing diagrams and stuff, I was like, oh no, what are we doing?
It was interesting watching the comments because barbers were confident that you were going to be fine. But like the average Joe was like, nah, his life is over. This guy better just let him buzz it all off. And so I talked to Kevin. He was like, I was confident all the time. I was like, yeah, it's not like hard. It's hard, but once you get it, you can do it. It's doable. It's a haircut. But it was funny to watch the comments kind of scroll through that.
Yeah, a lot of love in the comments. That was fun. But I think this is after the 4 or 5 hour saga. You see the smile on his face. It was, it was good. It was a good time.
Nick, have you found someone to cut? Are you gonna do that self cut, bro?
Bro, it's critical under here, man.
I know. I'm doing this thing just like this, bro. Boil it like Django.
I'm gonna do that. Shout out to Mark. He's saying the fade's still holding up. I mean, I can't lie.
Yo, look at your boy. The fade is looking
crazy.
That's crazy. It's like standard definition, but it's not.
Oh man! Shout out to Mark Camberiotti. That's the homie for real.
Facts, I do not know that person.
He's real cool.
Get to know him, man. He's
that guy.
Yeah. Well, again, welcome everybody, and we're gonna dive into a couple of different topics today. We got a few for you. We're going to be with you for about an hour. And so I think you're getting this kicked off, G. We're going to go into these quarantine protests. So why don't you set the table for us on this one?
So as you know, I mean, if you're in America, you're experiencing it. If you're in most parts of the world, you're experiencing. We've been in quarantine. Most people are trying to work from home if you can. So that's what we're doing. Like that's the government mandate, is that you should not be in groups of 10 or more. You know, CDC has its guidelines, and now there are individuals who are anti-quarantine and are organizing protests to protest the quarantine, and therefore breaking the quarantine intentionally. In Michigan and Wisconsin and other places, they are literally blocking traffic for medical professionals in order to protest a medical emergency. And before you ask, yes, it's white people. White people are the ones doing this. Even though it's these very same white people who have issue with Black Lives Matter, who have issue with the protests led by Colin Kaepernick. It is these same white people who are leading these anti-quarantine protests. And the last thing I'll say before I allow the rest of the group to chime in, because I'm actually incensed, like I'm livid about this, is these people are getting the majority of their information from Fox News. I'm going to say this here. Hopefully at the beginning 100%. We have a lot of viewers. Fox News is not real news. If you watch Fox News, you are literally playing yourself. Like, you are getting disinformation, period. Dr. Phil is not a real doctor. And he is a contributor. So, all right, that's all. That's kick it off. That's it. I'm tired. I'm sick of it.
Oh man, Logan, any thoughts on behalf of white people?
Yeah. So
any rebuttal?
Not all white people, you know. That's a common narrative there. Definitely some true points to that. I think Missouri held theirs today. About 45 minutes from my house in the state capitol. Kind of hilarious. I live in Berkeley. Typically, I'm in Missouri right now. The last protest I went to was an Ann Coulter protest, where ironically, every person that showed up with a mask on was escorted out in handcuffs because they believe them to be so dangerous. And now we have these people that are protesting masks, wearing masks, thinking COVID-19 is not real, while they're scared to. It's just a whole mess, kind of ridiculous, disappointing, because I've listened to podcasts. I did not find a good source of information, but I heard 3 podcasts this week talk about how these protests were being paid for, how they were being supported by certain right-wing groups trying to get people to push this narrative. Luckily, all the protests are pretty small, but like I just don't understand what they're doing. I guess Trump tweeted this week, liberate these states, liberate Michigan, liberate Virginia, protect your 2A rights, which is kind of interesting and scary. So it's being supported by Donald Trump, which I pretty much don't support anything Donald Trump supports. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that out loud or not, but that's kind of where I find myself sitting most days, because he doesn't exist in logic. But I realized one thing, that Trump supporters are different than Trump voters. I will say that out loud. But people that are big time supporters of Donald Trump, they believe in allegiance more than they believe in information. And so even if you tell them that they're wrong, they will not believe they're wrong unless their allegiant leader tells them, you shouldn't do this. This is a bad idea. Because they don't care if they're right or wrong. They care if they're faithful and if they're loyal. And I think we're going to hear about loyalty a little bit throughout the show, but maybe that's a little bit of my thoughts.
Okay. Oh, the smart side. We know something about
it. The very smart side.
Yes, sir.
Yo, when I saw this, the first thing I thought was, this is dumb. This is very dumb.
It's stupid.
It's stupid.
It's really stupid.
I feel like it's just, it's almost. I mean, what is there to say?
No words.
I have no words. I have no takes because it's just we're trying to get better. We're trying to get back to normal as soon as possible. I mean, obviously, despite the lives lost, which is terrible and it's awful, and to these protesters, if someone that you know hasn't been affected, someone that has been passed away, that hasn't passed away because of COVID-19, I can understand why you're not like getting it, why there's a disconnect. But you're shooting yourself in the foot if you want to go back to work. If you want to go back to work,
but that's their constitutional right to shoot themselves in the foot if they want to.
Why wouldn't they go get a job in a hospital if they want to work so bad, or in a grocery store, or somewhere essential to say like, let's actually end this. Instead, they're just like, we'll just we'll protest. That'll help.
So Nix, I'm glad that you put this picture up. It's a picture. It's a screen cap, literally from one of the protests where someone on the front line. I mean, when you're at a protest, your front line signs. Those are the people with the messaging. You know what I mean? Like they have to have the message on lock. This person. His sign, I don't even know if it's ever going to go up if you have the opportunity to put it up. But this man's sign says, "Who cut Andy's hair?" That's the messaging. That's it.
Who cuts Andy's hair? Who is Andy?
Is he
First
Andy?
off, who's Andy? Who is Andy?
Nobody knows.
I
know a lot of
Andys.
Andy is a metaphor, y'all.
It's a metaphor for the economy.
Karen, Andy is the male Karen.
So stupid.
Oh, God.
It's really concerning. Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, what you were saying earlier about, like, how destructive Fox News has not just been during the last couple of weeks with the protest, but the last few months of every misinformation, every downplaying, every lack of acknowledging the significance of this virus. Like we have all seen the videos showing the timeline from January, literally all the way up until now, to see how the narrative has kind of changed from this is a hoax to this is not a big deal, it'll brush away, and now it's almost frustrating how there is a lack of acknowledgement where I would have liked the narrative to go from it's not a big deal to we have to take this seriously. But instead, it's literally flooded. Like there was a picture on Fox News that showed an America map of all the states that were having protests all at the same time on the same day. And I'm just like,
oh man,
why is that the direction you took your news? Like, why did we go from it's a hoax to protest? I don't understand that. And that I think is the most frustrating part of everything Fox News does, yo. I've had enough of it, man. It's exhausting. It's so exhausting.
He's my grandpa, I guess. My grandma's husband, he's not related to me, but through marriage. He'll watch Fox News. I'll sit on the couch next to him and I'll tell him, "Hey, John, that's a lie." And he'll look at me and be, that's not a lie. And I'll say, no, like, let me show it to you in my phone. Like, why would I believe that? I believe who's telling me. And I'm like, I'm showing you information. Like, no, and we'll go back and forth on this like, because he likes Fox News, and I'm just like, I guess if you are allegiant to who's speaking to you, they're smarter than me. I guess. Like, I would probably think if I didn't know better, Tucker Carlson's probably more qualified to talk on something than I am. Who am I? I'm just a guy with
no, he's not.
But yeah, at the same point, no, he's not, because he's just lying.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, no, I think I mean a lot of takes here, but I wanna maybe talk about. There's obviously, I mean, hey, I'm gonna inject the race component. I really started to get triggered when I saw this guy. I think his name's Stephen Moore. He's an economist and he's a part of Trump's Reopen America Commission, which, mind you, it would have been amazing if Donald J. Trump would have started his pandemic response team with the same amount of vigor as he has this Reopen America team. That would have been amazing, bro. But thank you for being so proactive about when it's going to be okay enough to put people's lives at risk. We appreciate that. Forget about preventing all of this and maybe bracing for the impact a bit better so that all these lives wouldn't have been lost. But this guy, Stephen Moore, I believe is his name, literally said that these protesters are modern day examples of Rosa Parks, bro. Modern day examples of Rosa Parks, bro. I literally, this laptop that I'm doing this on right now, I literally almost tossed this joint into the middle of the street, bro. Rosa Parks, bro. I just do not understand the desire in mostly white America, particularly conservative America, to create this. Yeah, I had to say mostly, caveat, to create this narrative of oppression, bro. It's like they're hell bent on it. Like they have to equalize themselves into this oppressive narrative. And it's just like, and then the other, and I just have to be clear, and you know, from my perspective, we're seeing all this information start to come out about how COVID-19 disproportionately affects communities of color. And so what I see is a lot of mostly conservative whites going out in these protests and saying, well, look, you know, the odds appear to be in my favor. And so let's get back to this thing and let's get back to business as usual. Because, you know, I have healthcare, and if things do go left for me, I have an immediate access to get into the ER. I'm not going to have any issues getting coverage or whatever the case may be. So worst comes to worst, I'll take the chance. All while putting all these folks in danger who, again, because the majority of frontline workers are people of color, because we tend to be more in those, you know, different jobs because, you know, racism, poverty, things that all existed before this. And so they'll have to interact with all these different people who will still be going to, you know, the store. And now restaurants are going to reopen. And so now waiters and waitresses, and instead of doing, you know, the takeout and drive-through type stuff, now they have people in the space who've been reckless, and a lot of those people are going to die, bro. Let's just be real. Yeah. And I just don't, you know, and this all goes back to at the top, your boy Trump is just inflaming this, liberate Michigan, liberate Wisconsin, and tweeting his way through what should be him being a calming influence, a source of rational thought, a source of calm. He just inflaming the whole situation. And so I think this gets way worse before it gets better, for sure.
Yeah, and it's funny because people hated on Nancy Pelosi for requiring diversity in hiring in her last bill. And people were like, that doesn't make any sense. And now we're seeing it disproportionately harm the Black community. And it's like, yeah, because they can't get out of these frontline jobs. And we're not also allowing them into better jobs because we're not requiring diversity. And it's like, hey, she was actually making sense. Go figure.
Yeah. I will add, it's been incredible to see how this has affected the community I work with. You know, 9 to 5 every day, which are refugees, asylees, and special immigrant visa recipients. And to see the amount of strain our social services have been under because we haven't addressed the systemic issues that we should have addressed years ago, it's nuts. I mean, I have clients just making mad dashes to me for help with food stamps, temporary cash assistance, with medical insurance, and everything is backed up. 3-hour-long holds, and it's just insane to see how people can't get these basic services in a timely fashion. And it's also amazing to see how individuals out there protesting right now have the privilege to protest during a pandemic. Just like what Mike was saying, they don't have to worry about that. A lot of people that are vulnerable are in survival mode right now. We don't have the capacity. We don't even have the mental capacity to think about going outside with a group of people who are coughing on each other and hold up a sign.
I agree with you, Jordan. I think it is extreme privilege. I mean, in order to walk around, you know, the capital of your city or state with, you know, semi-automatic weapons is a profound amount of privilege. Like, you have to have privilege to be able to walk around and not be shot while you're carrying these heavy, weapons. Now, I do want to kind of address something that my good friend SL Kendra Stanton Lee has to say. She asked this question about, I saw it, you had it on the screen for a little bit there. She asked the question, how will Trump use COVID-19 to frame himself as a wartime president?
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to. He already has, right? Like, he's already tried to. But the interesting thing is that his response, I mean, his base is shored up by the fact that the singular source of media and news and information consumption is Fox News for them. For the people who are going to vote for Trump, they're watching Fox News and they're reading the Drudge Report and listening to Rush Limbaugh for their news. And those sources will call him a wartime president. They'll act as though his response was appropriate. Yeah. They'll underreport the deaths. They'll constantly downplay deaths. I was watching John Oliver talk about this. And honestly, that's exactly how he's going to benefit from this. But if we look at the numbers, his lack of response on the front end and his reckless response here on the mid to back end will inevitably lead to more deaths, which is all the more reason why he should not be reelected, even though some people will use this as the very reason why he should be reelected. And that's crazy. That speaks to the incredible amount of polarization that we're experiencing in the electorate right now. I think we're polarized beyond repair sometimes. And times like these, like when people are going out to protest a quarantine that's for their best, like for their good, it tells me, we're polarized beyond repair in some ways.
I have a question to bounce back of what Garrison was saying here. Now, this is a hypothetical scenario. What does the Republican Party look like if Trump does not get reelected? Because Fox News has crowned him as king. They have followed his rhetoric and his lies from the start. You've had a lot of, to not to sound too mythic, but like have sold their soul to Trump as politicians and leaders. Yeah. And I'm wondering, you put so much energy into this demagogue. What happens if he doesn't win? What does the party look like? How do they hold credibility once this president is gone, whether it is in November or whether it is in 4 years? How do they come back from that?
I think that the party they definitely go into it a bit of a wilderness for a bit, because I think that there are a lot.
It depends though which time.
Well, because
this November and next November are different, or next election.
Yeah, absolutely. If it happens, I think if it happens this time, there are a lot of current politicians that are going to have to pivot away from their Trumpism, and that's going to be very hard for them. And it's going to be very easy to point out those disparities and those inequities in their thought. And a lot of just like, Trump was able to ride the wave of some good Obama policies in his first couple of years, we're going to get hit in the first couple of years of the next term, whether that's his or the next president's, hopefully the next president's. We're going to be able to really see with clearer eyes all the damage that he has done. I think this whole fiasco, again, to Garrison's point around why he just cannot be reelected, this is all now colored by this interesting backdrop that dropped today. The Republican-controlled Senate Intelligence Committee finally basically agreed with rational thought that Russia helped elect Donald Trump. They announced it today. Okay.
Yeah, I saw that.
And so it's just like, all right, man. So just another hit at this dude's, illegitimacy. He's operating in an illegitimate manner. The world is starting to crumble around him. But see, that announcement also scared me, because now I think he's really going to be hell bent on, we need to open things back up. We need to bounce the economy back. We need to do this and that in order to get things ready. He's mobilized the DOJ. William Barr announced today that if stay-at-home orders by states go too far, the Department of Justice is going to support litigation against the states to reopen those states. I mean, it's just the levels of, just deplorable, inhumane, just all the different adjectives you can use. I mean, it's just off the charts now. So I think that they're going to be reeling for a while in the wake of this. Hopefully the wake starts very soon.
No, that's fair. I think it really depends, though, because if Trump wins in November, he's going to set himself up to keep Trump family members running. I mean, we've been looking for the first woman president. Don't be shocked if Melania Trump runs for president and becomes this. Logan, I mean, bro. I've heard it. Trump Jr.
Melania?
Ivanka, maybe.
Ivanka. I'm sorry. Ivanka. Okay, not Melania. Ivanka.
That's much better, but yeah.
Yeah, who's setting herself up for like this like grand. So like, but the thing is that the Republicans have to do and we're kind of seeing it with Democrats right now, where Biden has kind of pivoted to say, I want to be a little more progressive in my policies. Any Republican that runs again in the midterms or in 4 years is going to have to say, well, what about those 45 million people that really resonate with Trump policies and Trump ideas and Trump agendas? And they're going to say, how do we cater to the really racist and prejudiced groups in America? And so it's going to be interesting to see how a guy like that wants to be president so bad like Ted Cruz is going to have to find his way navigating through a party that doesn't like Trump and does like Trump. It could be really, really interesting to watch. But
I think they're going to do this thing where they talk. I mean, they're already doing it, where they talk about this disenfranchised, the people in Appalachia and like the disenfranchised middle America, and how this was a response to, Trump was essentially their way of saying, like, we're crying out for more and for help and forget the system. That's what they're going to do. And they're going to therefore moralize Trump, not so much in what he did and who he is and his failures, but in what brought him about. And that way they'll be able to essentially echo his message without necessarily putting those people out of the party, without saying you don't have a home here by like, forget Trump, we're against Trump. They'll essentially humanize those individuals who voted for him, moralize those individuals, invite them to follow them along, and they'll continue to enact disenfranchising policy and procedure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we could probably dive even deeper on this. We could do a whole show on it, but we just don't want to be depressed this entire episode.
No, it's true.
It's necessary but we had to talk about it, obviously.
I do think, though, it's easier for the Republicans to rebound because all they have to do is hate the Democrats. Like they're not moving the country forward. They're trying to preserve it back another direction. So it's a little easier to get behind that than it is to like mobilize in a group that's lost on which direction to go, because they're just basically following along. But that was my last thought. But anyway, should I just transition in or?
Yeah, why don't you move us to our next topic? It might get a little
cool. Shout out to Donnell.
Oh yeah!
Shout out to Donnell, live from New York.
Yes, sir.
Homie.
Shout out.
Real quick, big shout out to Donnell. He got us on this new platform. He's been in my DMs, holding your boy down. He might as well be a co-producer of the pod at this point. Holla at your boy, bro. We appreciate you, man.
Shout out.
So the thing that brought us all together for a little bit, I know the hardest part about this, like on a really selfish level, about COVID-19, not like the missing work and like all those other things, but like when it comes to entertainment, the hardest part for me has definitely been losing sports. I remember I didn't know how real this was until that night that the OKC Thunder canceled that game against the Jazz, and I was like, oh, this is serious. And so to not have sports for over a month now, I've been like, basketball is like, NBA playoffs were supposed to start on a Saturday, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do. But then Sunday came, and everyone was excited because The Last Dance came on, which was the now about to be 10-part series documentary film on Michael Jordan, regarded by many or some to be the greatest basketball player of all time. And really interesting because he played in an era that was before social media, was before the internet, and we didn't really get to know who he was and what kind of jerk he really was off the court. We just saw the greatness that he was on the court. And I think it was pretty interesting. And a few takeaways I found from that was that it was different than a normal sporting event, but it had the same passionate group of people. You typically, if sports are going on your TV, you could follow it on your phone, and you're like in a restaurant. You're like, oh, what's the score? Check the box score. Oh, dang, LeBron's lighting it up. Whoever's lighting it up, that's pretty dope. But on this, you had to follow along. So it was sports fans watching something that had a stream, a flow. It had content. It went down as the most watched ESPN original programming they've ever seen. Trivia question: does anyone know what the second most watched ESPN original content of all time was before this? Anybody know?
OJ.
No, it was the Nobody Knows Bo.
Okay.
The Bo Jackson documentary.
Really?
Yeah. You don't know.
Shout out Bo Jackson, though. Shout out to Bo Jackson, though.
Bo Jackson, shout out. My only takeaway before I pass it off was that it really harped on the fact that Michael Jordan needed Scottie Pippen to win all those titles. So what are we gonna say? Needed Scottie Pippen.
LeBron
couldn't even argue for him to get. Couldn't even argue for him to get more money. Come on. All right, keep y'all GOAT, whatever.
I will say this. That what we, and I think, Logan, you kind of touched on this. What we saw with MJ in the 90s, the ability to kind of avoid the instant social media kind of criticism, in some ways it kind of reminded me of like what Obama was able to do in like 2008, where like social media wasn't as rampant and hit, where people were constantly talking about this one individual 24/7. And I think when you see this documentary and you see how huge he was, in some ways it's kind of hard to criticize an individual negatively when there is no platform or outlet like a Twitter or a Facebook. But then you look at this generation and you look at like, not to place any of these individuals on the same level, but like LeBron or Melo or KD or even Steph Curry, the amount of discussion that happens about these individuals as just basketball players, constantly, nonstop. It just didn't happen with MJ, which it helped me realize that when we immortalize him as the GOAT, so to speak, it's really about the story that he kind of provided as a player. Like when they showed that game 2 against the Celtics, you put that into context. He plays golf with the dude, and then the next day he drops 63. Wild. You know what I'm saying? So to watch that live, to have to sit there and watch it, you can't miss it because like there's no on demand. You can't like you can probably record it maybe, but to watch that live,
not even.
I think that story is something that really helped MJ's legacy, because we can look at stats all day long, but the story that I think he was able to tell in so many different scenarios is probably why they've kind of given him that title.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt that we wouldn't like him as much now as they did then, just because he wasn't as nice as some of the superstars are, and we love criticism.
He's never been nice, man. Bump that dude, bro. my Michael Jordan hate is well documented, so I'm not.
Knicks fan triggered.
Hey, bro, we out here, bro.
Nice is so overrated. I just don't understand why we even care about niceness, especially in a competitive sport. This is why I absolutely love my dog. This is why I love the Mamba. Like Kobe Bryant was not nice. And why do we have to be nice when we're in competition with each other? This is so
these new
weird.
Kobe fans, bro.
New Kobe fans. You only know the person for like.
That you were a Josh Smith fan,
bro. Here's my thing. The one thing about the documentary that I love, first of all, I didn't even understand how people are saying he was like mean or a jerk. I did not see any of that in these first 2 episodes at all. It just seemed like he was competitive. So people came away from like, oh, he's such a jerk. And I'm like, I don't see that. But what I did think was interesting was that like watching Kobe over the years, Kobe cared so much about like pre-game focus. It seemed as though Kobe would like block everything out, like before game, after game, while he's practicing. It would just be like no fun and games whatsoever. But it seemed as though MJ was very jovial. He joked a lot in the locker room. Like, I was super surprised to see that. I expected more like how Kobe was.
Yeah. I think we got to keep watching. You know, what I will say is watching. All right. So watching episodes 1 and 2, you know, I think because I want to transition a little bit before we move to the next topic into what this doc may do or how it may inform the GOAT conversation, particularly for, you know, younger basketball fans. Because I feel like we're kind of all, or I guess mostly, are kind of in like that in-between phase where we caught some of Jordan, but then we also kind of grew up on the current era kind of a thing. And so for me, the second three-peat, I remember that all vividly. I was pretty small for the first three-peat, but you know, watching this dude MJ cook, especially in that Celtics series, I bumped into my dad the next day. You know, my pops, he was like, man, he's the GOAT, man. Like, you see them highlights, man. You see them highlights, man. That was crazy. So I was like, yo, pops, I had to give it up. Like, yo, because you know, I know Logan, LeBron's your boy. I love LeBron too. But dude, it was just like, it was different, bro. Like MJ, I know, like in current NBA, they said the worst, you know, shot in the game is like the mid-range jump shot, and there's metrics to all that and analytics, and I understand it. But this dude MJ was just automatic from the mid-range, bro. It was literally like a layup, bro. Oh my goodness.
He would say to that, like, it's only a bad shot if you miss it. Like, that's how he would say, and he's like, I'm not going to miss it. So it's just a different conversation as to where now they're like, well, if you miss this many, it's still okay. And MJ, Kobe, I think guys like that are like, why would I shoot shots I'm going to miss? That doesn't make sense. So it's just a different conversation for sure. I did think it was interesting to speak to Garrison for a second there. You said no one thought he was a jerk. Even MJ had said this last week or before this came out, he said, I'm only concerned about the documentary of people not liking me as much as they do right now. So I think there's a concern because he had just kind of been an ultra competitor. And maybe the ultra competitor came out where he was kind of next level, because I think there's something about competitive sports that we don't realize that maybe a lot of NBA players do, but not a few. A few are above it, and they're too competitive, not too in a bad way, but like more competitive. But like I think a lot of guys are like, yeah, like we're competitive, but this is also our job that we do for a long amount of time. So like getting screamed at on a Tuesday in January may not be everyone's agenda to play a sport, even though it is competitive. Like I think sometimes there's that line where they're like, yo, come on, can we relax? Like, we're about to play this trash team tomorrow. Like, we're at a 67% win rate right now. Like, we're doing good. Like, I think there's a little nuance to that we don't get. And I think Kobe was kind of like that. But then other guys were maybe as competitive, but maybe just a little bit nicer about how they played in the regular season, which might have been why they don't win as much in the finals. Even LeBron, maybe, I don't know. But
I think more will probably come out as the doc goes on.
Definitely.
The one little nugget, and maybe we'll tease this. We'll probably talk. I mean, this is going to be dropping more, so we're going to definitely talk about this next. We're definitely going to talk about this next week. But I want to tease maybe the MJ LeBron component a little bit, because I was clicking around Basketball Reference just for fun. And I think it's interesting if you look at the first 7 years of both of their careers, meaning MJ and LeBron, other than some key statistical categories, of course, you could probably make the argument even that LeBron had more team success, because within that first 7, LeBron went to the finals, that kind of thing. He was consistently going further in the playoffs, that sort of thing. MJ definitely the individual ridiculous performances, but those first 7 years up until 90-91, you get, when they get Pippen and that whole thing. Then from then on, it's not really close. When you start to, maybe a little bit, we'll see. LeBron's book hasn't been finished yet, but when you look at, the next 6 years that he played, of course, he had the 2-year hiatus, the chip every year, Finals MVP every year.
1 year, but yeah.
Well, there's the 1 year where he came back halfway through the year.
Yeah.
I kind of don't count that, but
when he lost to the Magic in the playoffs, I mean, it's kind of a thing.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Most of the year, bro.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, he was playing baseball, but yeah. So so up until then, I would edge LeBron, and then from then on, it kind of gets a little dicey. But we'll see where LeBron ends up. I mean, I think if LeBron finishes with 3 rings from 3 different teams, that's pretty compelling. To kind of you add in the Cleveland component of that. I mean, which was just like the loser town. I mean, you can make a good argument, but I think we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, because it's never been a conversation about like who's better. It's always been about who's greater. You can argue either one who's better at basketball, but it's who's had the greater career. Like that's how it's gonna have to play down. But for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, cool. So I think we'll transition to our next topic. Adrian, you want to flow us into that?
So this is one that I'm looking forward to. It's an article that we had kind of been discussing in our group chat a bit from AdventistToday.org.
Oh boy!
The title is Probation About to Close. Now, the article is not super lengthy, but there is one piece that I did want to just kind of read to just kind of give some context to the conversation. And I believe this quote is from GC. So I just want to read a snippet of that and then read the reaction of the author of the article. So this part says, though God's people will be surrounded by enemies who are bent upon their destruction, yet the anguish which they suffer is not a dread of persecution for truth's sake. And then he jumps down, and then he says something I think is very interesting. Very, 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 very interesting. If they could have the assurance of pardon, they would not shrink from torture or death, but should they prove unworthy and lose their lives because of their own defects of character, then God's holy name would be reproached. Then the author goes on, and I have to admit to you guys, Jordan and I have kind of expressed this. We grew up in a very conservative setting where prophecy was pushed all the time, and every traumatic experience, prophecy was something that was immediately pushed. But the author makes a great point here where they say, please understand what is being said here. After the close of probation, life continues with everyone, the righteous and the lost, suffering like they have never suffered since Homo sapiens inhabited the globe. Yet the suffering of the wicked doesn't allow them a chance to repent. The righteous have already secured salvation, but they don't know it yet. So they live in horrible agony. And then he asks the question, to what purpose is all of this suffering? Where if I am wicked, I have no more chances of repentance. So why exactly would I need to continue in this suffrage? And if I am righteous, if I'm good, why do I need to continue? I've done my part. And he goes on to kind of mention some other conversations he's had with peers, and in a very somber way, like as someone who was kind of trying to wrestle with this prophecy, you kind of see how like the argument crumbles relatively quickly in those specific conversations. Like one person, he says, someone else tossed out the notion that beings from other worlds are watching our world like a series of Survivor, and they need to see us suffering needlessly to understand that Satan was unfair in his accusation and God was right. So I got to hear you guys' thoughts on this, because it really it touches that nerve, y'all, of like, once this seal is closed, then that's it. And the suffering that happens afterwards, what does that suffering mean? And so it's interesting, man. I want to hear what you guys got to say about this for sure.
I have thoughts. I don't know if you guys, who wants to kick this one off, but I think the basic tension is right, is that like Ellen White essentially, like the Seventh-day Adventist Church has essentially based the majority of our understanding of what happens at the close of probation. We've based it on what Ellen White says. A lot of what we believe cannot be explicitly extracted from scripture the way it's preached. All right. And that's a big tension. All right. Now, what I'm not saying is that probation closing and those types of things, the idea, the concept isn't in the Bible, but the way we teach it and the way we preach it is not as clearly articulated by scripture. And I think the real tension is like Ellen White said it. For some people, like you said, Adrian, like Ellen White said it, that settles it for me. I believe it. That settles it for me. Like that's like the very Adventist way of like believing. And honestly, that's very much like a cult. I'll start there. The second thing I'll say is that like if you, for some reason or another, challenge what Ellen White has said, people will come for your throat. Like they're like, get out of the church. Why are you an Adventist pastor? Why are you in the church? Like either she's 100% correct or 0% correct. And like that's the dichotomy that they create. And it's really, 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 it's a lot of tension. And it's really hard for us to think critically, to critically engage Ellen White's writings if we aren't able to, at the very least, admit she's a human being, not scripture, and therefore it's really improper for us to expect for her to be infallible or inerrant. And I think that's the tension that we're existing in.
Yeah, I think I think you said that well, Garrison, so I don't want to repeat, but I just want to hammer home, I think as I've reflected on the article, because I braved the wilderness and shared it on my page, and I've had a couple conversations both on the page and in the DMs about it. And I think what was interesting is maybe some of this, I talked about it's maybe like the chicken or the egg kind of conundrum. He could be, I think, responding in some ways to the way that the church has used Ellen White, as opposed to how she would have intended her writings to be used. And there's obviously, sometimes these compilations and the stuff the church has put out and kind of extrapolating, almost proof texting, her writings like we do sometimes with scriptures, can obviously put it in a negative light. And so I think to the overall point, we absolutely should be able to critique Ellen White or any other writer. I mean, we critique scripture, you know what I mean? And so it's like, how could we believe that everything that she wrote was infallible and that sort of a thing? And I think the problem is there's so many people who've been beat over the head with it for years that you have this sort of built in. I mean, I feel like I just got over, like within the past 5 years or so, maybe 5-10 years, the propensity to want to have to defend everything that Ellen White said. Like, it's like ingrained in me, It's not even something that my dad taught me necessarily, but Adventist culture teaches you that.
It's there.
You know what I mean? And it's like, and you can get really in your feelings about it, or you can feel really insecure sometimes when people try to bash it and that kind of a thing. And so I just think that we have to just use much more intellectual humility when people are processing these things, and not assume that they just have to, just like that, understand it or take it the same way we do, because it's really not worth it at the end of the day to have these arguments over, things that are not. We have enough scriptural arguments, let alone to have non-scriptural ones. Now we can have discussions and debates about the implications of what they mean, but don't tell me that it has to just be accepted wholesale. Like this all or nothing thing is really dangerous in my view.
I think in some ways it might be rooted in some of the conversations that I remember having with some of my family, which is the idea of if she is a prophet, then the prophecy in which she gives us it has to be truthful. And you know, they'll say these are the 3 criteria that you have to meet in order to be a prophet. And I think the tension that we sometimes see is if she is wrong on this, then what else could she possibly be incorrect on? And I think if we were to go down that route, I don't know if people are comfortable enough in kind of accepting that reality, because it opens up Pandora's box that I don't think we've ever even thought to consider.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's true. And actually, like, for me, I agree with your points. And we could probably go on all day about Ellen White's truth or untruth. But I actually resonated with him talking about, shout out to Lawrence Seibold, the man that wrote the article we're referencing. Time on earth is short, probation is closing soon. This Ted Wilson quote that was put on a meme. Preparation to see God face to face by repentance and forsaking of sin needs to be done now. And so it's actually so funny within Adventism specifically that we love these things. We love these quotes because we're really good at not being very good. And we love the idea of saying that we're ready for Jesus to come because we like sat around and got ready. But we forget that Jesus said, if you didn't clothe and feed and help, you're not going to be a person I knew anyways. And so it's funny because I called one of my best friends on Sunday night and we were kind of, I'll leave his name out because we were kind of going back and forth about why ministry isn't like for us. And I told him, I said, the reason I don't like ministry is because I don't really like telling people whether or not they're going to go to heaven or hell. Like, and that seems to be a huge conversation all the time is, are you ready for heaven? You might be going to hell. And this conversation back and forth about where you're going to end up in eternity, when I see in my community needs of people that aren't worried about eternity. They're worried about staying alive tomorrow. And they're worried about getting help tomorrow. And they're worried about food today and clothing today and shelter today. And I'm saying, like, close and probation, like, am I ready? Like, I'm just trying to help folks. Like, and as Adventists, since we don't help people regularly, we're not very good at thinking about what we actually need to do to be ready. So we'd rather have a conversation about when Jesus is going to come than actually about, and then we're going to argue about if Ellen White was true or not, when Ellen White's like, you missed the part about me telling you to be better people. And you're going to fall in line properly as it is. But
shout out to the comments. I don't have anything other than to say shout out to comments. Scott Cable, Don L, Gabe Morales.
Facts.
Like y'all are giving me life with these guys. Hashtag we not ready.
We not ready.
We not ready. Now go ahead, Jerry. My bad.
Yeah, no, you're good. So, I mean, I gotta say, I'm not as familiar with Ellen G. White's writings as you guys are, but I think the one thing I can, or I'll at least try to point out, is that I feel like the reason why we really struggle to hold Ellen G. White, maybe, I don't know if accountable is the word, or at least to criticize her in a very fair way, is that I think her being the prophet in our denomination makes us feel special. Ellen G. White makes us feel special. And when she is in any way threatened, that threatens our feeling of being set aside, of being the chosen people, of being the one religion that got it right. And I feel like that's maybe where some of people's fears are coming from when they see Ellen G. White being questioned, where I looked in the comment section of some of you that shared the article, and I think it was Jamie Calazar where I first saw him engage it, and people commented on what he posted, which was just sharing the article itself, to be clear. But it's wild how people really got upset. I don't know if salty is the word, but I'll use salty. People were really salty because Ellen G. White to them is right on the same level as the Bible. And I can understand why that's the case for many people, because that's what we were taught. That's what we grew up in. So it's really hard to divorce ourselves from Ellen G. White, even if we're divorcing ourselves from her for a moment just to criticize her fairly.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jordan. I mean, everybody's making great points, but like kind of building on the point that Jordan is making there about like our ability to fairly critique or engage Ellen White, like first of all, we're supposed to be a denomination, a movement that has existed for 154, 56, whatever it is, years, right? And like, it's important for us to ask the question, how can you exist for 150 plus years and not change and still be a movement? Like, that's gonna be really hard for us to really like question that.
Come on.
You're a puddle.
Let's say like we've changed a few times, and let's say within the last 100 years we haven't grown and changed in our beliefs. Right. Like, do we really believe what the Bible says in Proverbs, that the path of the just is as a shining light that gets brighter and brighter until the perfect day, which is the second coming? Which means that we're supposed to be growing in our revelation, in our understanding of God. The work of the Holy Spirit is not relegated to just Ellen White, but the spirit of prophecy should still be at work today. Those things are important. The second thing I want to say is this. I don't understand. I saw that post, Jordan, by Jamie Calasar. Shout out to the homie Jamie Calasar. And on the post, he really challenged the way in which Ellen White has said blatantly racist things in her writings. And the interesting thing that I noticed on the post, which I'm a person with great appreciation for Ellen White, I feel like that needs to be said. But what I noticed on the post is that people had all kinds of grace and understanding for the fact that Ellen White was a product of the time that she was living in when it comes to racial issues. But they do not possess the ability to have that same approach when it comes to her understanding about biblical issues. Like, what if Ellen White was a product of her time when it comes to biblical interpretation as well? I think that's an important thing for us to also consider, because if she can look at other human beings, Black people, and say that we're amalgamations, or other people of color are amalgamations, and we can say, wait, she was a product of her time. We should also be able to look at the way in which she interpreted or commented on scripture and say, wait, she was a product of her time, and we've grown since then. Here's the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to shut up. All right, the last thing. The last thing I'm going to say.
You're good, bro. You're good.
In Lauren, I don't know Lauren well. I've seen and kind of interacted with him online. I like his piece. The one critique that I would probably kind of push back on, he talks about how in Ellen White's writing, she describes how after, probation is closed, both righteous people and unrighteous people will both be thrown into this whirlwind of like, oh my goodness, am I good with God? And I understand for him, he kind of says that conception is one of a monstrous God, I believe. He says something to that effect, that no God of love would throw their people into this kind of like whirlwind of like, oh my goodness, am I good with God? And I understand how one could come to that conclusion. But the thing that I think needs to balance that is a holistic understanding of the writings of Paul particularly, because in Paul's writings, he talks about how we're justified and set free, made righteous by the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. But he also invites us into Christ's sufferings. He says in Philippians 3 particularly, like, all I want to know is Christ and the resurrection of his, like the power in the resurrection, as well as his sufferings. And that relational dissonance of like, oh my goodness, probation is closed, I'm in the time of trouble, and I don't know if I'm saved. I would describe that as relational dissonance with God. And that relational dissonance existed on the cross. When Jesus was on the cross, he is thrown, that's his time of trouble. He's thrown into this whirlwind of like, my God, why have you forsaken me? Right? Like, he is like in this moment of like crazy relational dissonance.
I gotta drop the gift.
Mean quality, bro.
And I think it's important for us to understand that we may experience some level, certainly not to the level of total disconnection that Jesus felt from the Godhead, but we may experience some of that same relational dissonance. And I don't think it is incongruent with a God of love for us to feel that in this time of trouble. And that's the one kind of like pushback I give to the article. I think that he's really on point with critiquing the way in which we use Ellen White. But I do think that concept, that idea is broad, and I think it's in the narrative. I think it's in there, and I think, I mean, even Jacob. I think Nick, your dad mentioned this in Jacob's time of trouble. he experienced relational dissonance with his brother, who he thought was going to kill him. Yeah. But the reality is that his brother had already forgiven him, and therefore there was no need, but it did not stop the psychological process of there being some dissonance about where am I, where do we stand? And I just think it's important for us to keep that narrative in balance.
Yeah, It is funny that I started this episode talking about allegiance over information with Donald Trump, and now we have this same parallel in our church, allegiance over information. It can be dangerous. It's very dangerous to hold someone to an authority without information to support that authority. If your favorite church leader says something wrong or problematic, it's okay, as long as you admit that they were wrong or problematic and move forward and hopefully learn from that and not repeat it yourself. But unfortunately, the same people that believe in the allegiance over information for Ellen White are believing the allegiance over information. Never mind. I'm not gonna do that. But
careful, Logan. Careful, bro.
Okay. Well, that was awesome. And again, that's a whole nother episode in itself. But I think we've gotten some good content in on these topics. But I got to do one more thing before we get to PMI. We got to do this real quick. We got to.
What we got to do? Oh yeah.
Hey. Let's go. So many hits. I gotta play it.
That's a jam. Oh my goodness, what a song.
Oh yeah. This is the one.
We get to the part you know.
This is the one.
I can't hear it. It's not coming through for me, so
I'm a mute. Oh, we're about to get copyrighted. We're about to get
right.
Yeah, this is about to get taken down.
Cease and desist.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, you was fronting at first. Had to do that.
500K, yes sir, man.
Had to do that. And so if you heard that, you heard more of Teddy Riley and Babyface than anyone did who turned in for part one of this.
I'm screaming.
500K, yo.
Oh my goodness. It finally went down last night. And you know, I saw a really interesting comment that sort of sums it all up as to what happened. Tarana Burke, shout out to her, the creator of the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
We won. Yes, the culture won, but also Kenny Babyface Edmonds won. Let's just be real. Babyface won. He has the hits on deck. He was prepared the first time. You know, his speakers was working. Your boy Teddy Riley was looking crazy out here in the yard. You feel me? He just wasn't, you know. And then this moment right here, and we'll do a call back to the MJ doc. When Babyface went from the Whitney and CeCe duet into the Whitney and Mariah duet, bro.
It was kind of crazy.
Oh my goodness.
It was kind of crazy.
Literally, bro. It shut it down, bro. It shut it down. Then there was a little shade, which I thought was cool. You know, Babyface said, was that a remix? Teddy, yes. Oh, okay. I didn't know we were doing remixes, but it's cool. I don't do remixes. It definitely got competitive. You feel me? But you know, and they have Revolt has a good breakdown. I'll drop this in the comments. That has the whole playlist for you there. If you have Tidal, which I don't. So, but there's so many hits on here. Of course, they both wrote for Michael Jackson, which is crazy. Boyz II Men's in here. Janet Jackson, TLC, Blackstreet, of course, with Teddy Riley. guy, Tevin Campbell with the Can We Talk. That was my personal favorite. I mean, that goes crazy. So it was pretty fun. But there was so much hype going into the first one. It was like a whole week of hype and promos, and everybody was talking about it. And that joint was just a dub, bro. It didn't go down, dog. It didn't go down at all.
Viewers, bro.
It was
but it made for great Twitter content. People were so happy that it was failing. It was hilarious. Yeah, very fun.
Yeah, man. So, but yeah, definitely Babyface won, but it was a good. But it had me thinking. I hope y'all been thinking about this too. Just for a couple minutes here before we close, what are some verses that you'd want to see? I mean, we've had a couple. We had the Swiss Beats Timbaland one. On a previous episode, Logan, you mentioned the Lil Jon.
Jon
and T-Pain.
T-Pain, yeah.
And so, I mean, what's a matchup y'all want to see? Let me know.
Ooh, I'm seeing the comments online about Kirk Franklin versus Fred Hammond. Of course, we know Fred Hammond will body that dude.
We're not going through this again.
Man, bro.
No, but you know what? We should have we should have Kirk Franklin versus Ty Tribbett.
Now
that would be crazy. That would be crazy.
Fire,
now Kirk will win. But Better is one of the best gospel songs of all time.
Ty would give him a run, though.
He would give him a run.
Yeah.
For the first 15 minutes. Yeah. For the first 15 minutes. Yeah. It'd be close.
Yo, I would love to see Kirk Franklin versus DJ Khaled. Holy versus Sinful. Worlds collide, bro. The greatest crossover ever.
Bro, greatest
in the club and the church at the same time.
Greatest ad-libs between DJ and Kirk, bro. That'd be fire.
I think it'd be interesting to see Kanye versus Drake.
Ooh,
that's a good one.
I think that'd be a good one.
Never gonna happen.
I think Kanye probably wins too, but the thing with Drake is he was like a cult classic before he really hit. Like he has a couple mixtapes.
Yeah,
he has some fire on them joints.
He's got hits too,
and he has a bunch of hits, and he has a big catalog for sure.
You gotta respect him, bro.
Yeah.
But honestly, Kanye he's a producer. So like what we saw Babyface do with the transitions and like Kanye's it's gonna go crazy, and then Drake's gonna have to break out like a diss track and like say something.
Easy hit, like
his house.
Yeah, I feel you. Donnell said Kirk versus Teddy Riley. You trolling for sure.
Can we get Carol Baskin versus
oh my God,
Tiger King?
Hey, you know we gotta do Adventist versus
Jamie George versus
we do like DC versus Adrian Langdon.
That's a good one. We get John Lomaking versus Wintley Phipps. That's going to hit. That's going to hit.
Oh, yeah, bro.
That's going to hit.
We're losing viewers.
Yeah, I know. Quick.
Jordan, slide us to PMI, bro, before we close.
Yes, of course. So as we do every week, a PMI stands for piqued my interest, and that's just a fancy way of saying what piece of art. It could be book, music, film, television, anything that you've seen that's inspired you, that you want to share with someone. Now is the time to share it. First, we're going to start with Mike, and then we'll just go on from there.
Let's go with Garrison first.
Oh yeah, let's go with Garrison first.
Yeah, G, you can go first.
No, I appreciate it, guys. You know, I have to dip in just a little bit, but the thing that piqued my interest this week is a documentary that just came out on HBO called Atlanta. It's a mini series or a series. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's three parts out currently. I haven't watched the third part, so I don't know if that's the end. I hope it's not. But this show is amazing. Like as you guys know, I'm Atlanta, Georgia, born and bred, cornbread fed. That's my heart. I love the city of Atlanta. I love the A. And growing up, I was born in 1990. But early in the 80s, in 1981, 1980, 1979, there were murders and abductions of young Black boys mostly. I think there was a couple of girls, but mostly Black boys between the ages of 9 and 15, 16. They were getting taken and killed. And it was this huge shock sent through the city. But it's also during the same time when Atlanta is becoming the Atlanta that we know, this booming city that's like Black friendly, and like we run that thing. So growing up in the early 90s, I heard a lot about the murders of these boys and the kidnapping of these boys, but I never really knew what to think of it. And watching the documentary, it put so much in context, including this thing here. Like growing up in Atlanta, all of the kids had these identikid cards. Wow. Where like you're supposed to keep this on you at all times. That's Lil G. And I had this on me at all times, just in case I was taken, just in case I got lost. I could run to someone and give them my identikid card, and it would, they'd take me where I needed to be. And so it put so much of my early childhood into perspective. It's powerfully made, and I highly recommend checking it out, especially if you are from Atlanta or familiar with the city.
Very good. Very good.
Very good. That's interesting. The identikid card. I actually had one of those when I lived in Cali around that same age. I had one, and I thought it was just a Cali thing. It's interesting that they had them out there too. So, that's pretty crazy.
That's wild. So Garrison, so I know you have to go, so we want to just let you be able to exit out as unawkwardly as possible.
No, I appreciate it. It was good. This is the best episode so far, guys.
Yeah, this is fun, bro.
Yeah, until next time. Peace.
Yes, sir. Peace.
See you, bro.
All right, Adrian, you want to go next for us?
Sure, man. Well, I got to do it again. Yesterday was the series finale of the miniseries Plot Against America, and man, that show it has consumed my time, my reading, my research. The creator of the show, David Simon, he also does a podcast where he breaks down a lot of what makes the story so good. And one of the things that really stood out to me, and I remember talking to Jordan about it, where the book and the show has a term that is essentially America first, right? And when a lot of the critics saw what the content of the show is going to be about, you had a lot of right-wingers like Breitbart News come in and say, oh, this is not an alternate reality show because you're pulling this phrase America first from, the MAGA hatters and the nationalists right now. So it's like so spot on the nose, like it's left-wing propaganda. But what really blew my mind was when David Simon was saying, like, we did not create this term in a response to Trump and the rhetoric he's used. This was real rhetoric that was being used. The phrase America First was an actual phrase being used during World War II that was a phrase that targeted Jews and Japanese people. And so it really kind of showed that, like, when we use certain language and terminology, we have no idea the history behind it. And we assume that, like, oh, this is like left-wing propaganda. But the point he's making is like, nah, like y'all are using these xenophobic and nationalistic fascist terms and you have no idea. And it's like, we don't really read our history. And I think that is what's really stood out to me, is the show really reveals the amount of things that were so accurate in this alternate reality that just never gets talked about. And that's really been over for me. So definitely.
Thank you, Adrian. That is also again on HBO, so you can watch it there. Logan, you want to go next?
True. Yeah, for sure. I think content has been tough for me this week. I'm going to be honest with you. My dad and I started a bathroom remodel last week. And so the art that I've experienced is I laid an entire shower. I tiled an entire shower. My dad was cutting. I was tiling. I'm going to try to post a pic of it. But that's like been, and so like there's one thing about content that I like is that it teaches you about something, but It's actually funny. It's taken me 33 years, but my dad and I we're really close. We talk all the time. But I think this was the first time that we'd worked in such a small space that we were forced to really get along with each other. And if we were frustrated, you couldn't go nowhere because like other times we've done projects where I'll just like walk to the other building or whatever else it is. And I've actually loved it because we've actually not even realized it probably like together, but separately, that we've really developed a really good way to communicate with one another, which is more respect, more love. And so that's been fun, tiling an entire subway tiled marble shower, which is kind of dope. And I actually picked out the design and like have kind of like put my handprint on it. So that I did start some shows this week. I started watching Tiger King, which y'all have been recommending. It definitely looks like Carol Baskins killed her husband. So that's kind of interesting to me. And then kind of funny group chat dialogue, but I started this show called Black AF, which I thought was really interesting on Netflix. It's just funny. Jordan described it and the episode title as Unapologetically Black. And so I enjoyed kind of like some of those angles that they're kind of talking about with this show. Basically, it's a show of a guy that's done well in film, and he's kind of just it's kind of in the, maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, Jordan, it's kind of through the eyes of his daughter, it seems like.
Yes, she's filming a documentary, and then that's the frame of the show. Yeah. And
so just kind of interesting take on the kind of scripted reality shows that I've loved pretty much since The Office hit. So yeah, you definitely check that out. It's been a good watch so far.
All right. Thank you, Logan. Nick, you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm kind of rereading this book. It's called Exception to the Rule: The Surprising Science of Character-Based Culture, Engagement, and Performance. We read it as a leadership team here at Andrews. It was picked by Dr. Luxton, and it's really good. And I'm rereading. They have a chapter. There's these 7 pillars. One of those pillars is courage, and so they're one of the things that they talk about in that chapter is that courage is something that is learned, just like cowardice. And so there's no such thing as a courageous DNA. The environment that we're in and the folks that are around us help to shape what that looks like and what that means. And it really can impact how the culture you create for your team and that sort of a thing. And so if you're involved in any sort of, teamwork, team building, or even just personally are wanting to know some even scientific methods behind how to best operate within a team, I highly recommend that book.
Very good. And where can people buy this book? Amazon, maybe?
Yeah, you can get it at Amazon. I can probably drop a link or something in the show notes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And I'll just close out with the thing that piqued my interest this week. So Brene Brown, a couple of months, maybe last month, a couple weeks ago, released her brand new podcast called Unlocking Us with Brene Brown. It's really good. And again, like, I'm a huge Brene Brown fanboy. She talks about vulnerability and belonging. And I think what's great about this is that she just brings on any and everyone. Alicia Keys was on the show. So many other people were on the show too. David Kessler, Glendon Doyle. So really people from different corners of culture talking about emotions, talking about really, I would say, matters of the heart. And I think she really does a lot to bring value to those kinds of discussions and makes it more than just fluff. It's something that really helps us live our daily lives. So I definitely recommend that. I find it on Apple Podcasts. Not sure if it's on Spotify, but that's where I listen to it.
Awesome.
Jordan waiting for that Last Dance Brene Brown documentary. He can't wait.
Very true. Very true.
We're getting Jordan Smart hot takes on the Jordan doc next week. So, bro, I need you to catch up on 1 and 2, watch 3 and 4, and we need a cogent response. You're gonna kick us off on that one.
Definitely.
There were some good mascot takes. A mascot showed up a few times. Yeah,
you are the mascot connoisseur, bro. So oh man, well, guys, this has been fun. Thank you all for watching. Definitely like and share. And I was gonna say subscribe, but this is not a YouTube channel, so I've been watching too much YouTube.
You can subscribe to my Cash App.
Yeah, definitely. And you can. I've been getting some requests in my DMs to set Logan up. So I mean, hey, if feel free to shoot your shot. If that is you, he's out here ready to go on virtual dates. Yeah. So just let me know. Let me know.
I do $10 starting fee, and then like just $20.
It's the Cash App circle. Is that what it
is? Yeah. Send me 25. We'll turn it in.
Please, Logan.
Oh man. All right, y'all. Have a good one.
All right. See you, fam.